Hello, my name is Margaret Carrolls, and I'm a project coordinator with the Milton Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition and a Milton resident. Our award-winning coalition, MSAPC, was founded 6 years ago and is a part of the town's public health department. Our coalition is one of hundreds of similar coalitions found around the country, dedicated to preventing and reducing youth substance abuse in our communities. We work on substance abuse prevention because addiction is one of the most prevalent public health issues of our time. MSAPC brings together town leaders, representatives from schools, business, healthcare, law enforcement, the faith communities, parents, and young people. Together, we gather information about the drug and alcohol challenges in our town, and then work on solutions that make a difference. Over the 5 years since we have been gathering data, we've seen a significant reduction in alcohol and drug use amongst Milton youth. We are fortunate to have a coalition made up of a great group of individuals who are passionately dedicated to this important issue. Every 3 years, the coalition completes a community assessment. This assessment is a close look at what is going on with youth in Milton. In 2019, it included an anonymous survey of the student population at Milton High School and the 6th and 8th graders at Pierce Middle School, an online survey completed by over 500 parents, student and adult focus groups, interviews with key stakeholders in Milton, and other data from law enforcement, emergency services, and our local hospital. We value what teens say and think about their own lives and experiences. We make it a point to ask them questions directly during focus groups and through anonymous surveys. We are also interviewing adults who work directly with youth to get their perceptions. From this research, we learn about what substances are being used by Milton teens, how frequently they are using, where they are getting them, and why they are using. But these are not the only questions we ask. We also ask teens about how they were feeling. Are they stressed, anxious, or depressed? Do they participate in extracurricular activities? Do they feel connected to their community, including their peers and adults? We also look at whether there are kids at particular risk, so that we can develop appropriate strategies that serve youth who have different needs. We also ask parents about their beliefs, concerns, and behaviors around substance use. One interesting fact we learned from our 2019 survey of over 500 Milton parents was that 43% indicated that one of their immediate family members has struggled with alcohol or drugs. Since children are affected by what they see in their families, and because addiction is often an inherited disease, this statistic is very concerning. We put all of this information together that we collected from youth, parents, and adult leaders to make informed decisions about which strategies to best use here in our community. With the help of some of our staff, coalition members, experts, and supporters, in this video you will learn how drugs and alcohol can lead to long-term negative consequences for young people. We will highlight some of the results from our most recent community assessment. We will look at why some of our youth are turning to drugs and alcohol. And finally, we will hear from members of our community about what we can all do to help prevent youth substance use. First, I'm going to turn it over to one of our coalition members, Dr. Margie Skier, resident of Milton and a professor in public health and researcher who specializes in youth substance use prevention. She will help us understand the effect of drugs and alcohol on the adolescent brain.
At around puberty, the brain starts going through a massive restructuring, whereby from around that time until the mid and even late 20s, the brain works extremely hard to become more efficient. And the restructuring happens whereby the back part of the brain that's responsible for emotion regulation finishes the process first. And the last part of the brain to finalize is the front, which is responsible for information processing and decision making. And that's why we often see greater risk-taking behaviors in adolescents, as more weight is given to the payoff associated with risk than in adults. What we know is that alcohol and drug use during this time interferes with the way messages in the brain are sent and are received, which can ultimately change the brain structure and function. During this restructuring process, the brain's almost like a tree, whereas the neural pathways are being sprouted and pruned depending on what young people are doing. Scientists call this the use it or lose it principle, where the skills of things that adolescents are engaged in consistently are more likely to become hardwired, and neural connections of skills they're not developing will likely die off or be pruned. So when teens are engaged in sports, academics, playing a musical instrument, or even playing video games, those are the pathways that will be solidified. And currently in the United States, about 6% of 12th grade students use marijuana every day. So those are the pathways that will be hardwired, increasing the risk for the development of a substance use disorder. And the image that comes to mind when I think about the adolescent brain is a baby giraffe. So think about if you've ever seen a giraffe being born. Immediately, it has to learn how to walk to be able to protect itself from potential predators. So it kind of flails around trying to get its footing. And the adolescent brain is similar, not because it's immature, but because it's just doing a lot of things at the same time, trying hard to develop efficiencies, which will be solidified in adulthood. But ultimately, drugs and alcohol interfere with this process. And so when substances are used during this time of restructuring, again, it's from puberty until the mid to late 20s, it can cause long-term changes, including the brain's desire to seek reward and pleasure, which is biologically wired anyway, but are significantly enhanced by substances. And that is why 9 out of 10 people with substance-related problems started using before the age of 18. It has to do with the way that the brain is wired and what substances do to those pathways. And science has shown that every year that we can delay teens from initiating alcohol and other drug use, the better off they will be over time for many reasons, including because it gives the brain the best chance given everything else teens have going on.
Thank you, Dr. Skier. Next, with some of our coalition members, we will take a look at what potentially harmful and addictive substances are being used by young people here in Milton.
Milton Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition took a comprehensive look at the well-being of teens in Milton for the first time in 2014 and then again in 2019. Both reports found that alcohol, marijuana, and nicotine are the most common substances used by high school-aged teens. You can see that alcohol and marijuana use went down between 2014 and 2019, while use of nicotine through vaping went up. It must be noted that most teens are not using drugs and alcohol while in high school.
Students were surveyed and asked, have you used alcohol in the past month? In 2014, 50% of high school students said yes, which was significantly higher than the national average. In 2019, 37% said yes, which is a big and exciting decrease to see in 5 years. However, the 2019 rate is still slightly higher than the national average. A closer look at the gender differences in the 2019 data found that 41% of females reported drinking, while only 32% of males did. Well, both of these numbers have fallen over the past 5 years. In 2014, males and females are drinking at much the same rate. Now, females are drinking a lot more than males. Binge drinking, which is having 5 or more drinks within a couple of hours and can be very dangerous for many reasons, showed similar patterns. The binge drinking rate also went down between 2014 and 2019, but we are still higher than the national average. And again, females report more binge drinking than males.
The current use of marijuana by teens has also decreased in Milton over the past 5 years. Unlike alcohol, males are more likely to use marijuana than females. We did find that high school students are in cars with someone driving high on marijuana at higher rates than with someone who was driving while drunk, indicating a lack of awareness of the dangers of drug driving. Studies have shown that using marijuana can seriously alter a driver's judgment, perception, ability to think clearly, and reaction time.
Nicotine, the most active and addictive ingredient in cigarettes, has become popular through e-cigarettes, or vapes. Vaping took off in 2017 due to the huge push by manufacturers and sellers to hook young people. They did this by flooding social media with advertising targeted at kids and by creating kid-friendly flavors. Between 2014 and 2019, Milton saw the rate of regular e-cigarette use go up among youth from 20 to 29%. Since then, thanks to new laws and regulations, vaping products have become harder for kids to get. Even though there has been progress in limiting youth access, there is still a lot to do.
Substance use disorders cost our country a whopping $740 billion a year in healthcare costs, lost productivity, premature deaths, and crime. But more importantly, it has devastating effects on individuals and families. So you might ask, why do young people turn to drugs and alcohol? Well, as Dr. Skier explained earlier, adolescent brains are not yet fully developed, and thus risk-taking is typical during the teenage years. As adults, we can reduce this risk-taking behavior by talking about our expectations with them. But there are other reasons why kids use as well. When alcohol or drugs are easy to get at home or from others, then kids are more likely to use them. And when young people see adults regularly using, and there is an accepting culture with few consequences, then kids do not get the message that there's something wrong. There are other reasons as well. When youth are bored, getting high with friends is an easy way to have fun and feel included. And also, when kids are sad or anxious, drugs help to reduce those feelings. And when they see alluring messages through social media or other advertising, they can get drawn in. Addressing all these factors that we know contribute to youth substance use is not only the responsibility of families, but it's also the responsibility of the entire community. Let's see what our research found when we looked at why people in Milton use drugs and alcohol.
Teens in Milton reported that it is easy to get alcohol, marijuana, and vapes. Most teens who drink report that they get alcohol by giving someone else money to buy it. Alcohol and vapes are often purchased by an older friend or sibling. High school students report that they can get marijuana just about anywhere. Money does not seem to be a barrier to getting alcohol and drugs.
Milton youth reported high rates of depression and anxiety among high school students, which is also being seen across the country. Our assessment found that those teens who reported mental health issues were more likely to also report drinking or using drugs.
Alcohol use is widely promoted as part of sports culture in our country and around the world. It's interesting that the Coalition's research found that the more teams a high school student is on, the more likely they were to use drugs and alcohol. On the other hand, they also found that kids involved in sports were less likely to experience depression.
Corporations pushed vaping on social media, which really made it popular among teens, even though they said they had developed it for adults who are trying to quit smoking. They are making money, sadly, at our children's expense.
So what can we do about it, as individuals and as a community? You will now hear from some members of the Milton Youth Advocates for Change, a youth-led, adult-supported, community-based group dedicated to making Milton a better place for young people, along with some other coalition members and supporters. They will share with you both what they think and what research tells us can be effective prevention strategies here in Milton.
We live in a culture that already glamorizes and profits from drug and alcohol use. It is important that kids have adults in their lives that they can look up to as positive role models.
Know what your kids are up to. Be interested in all aspects of their lives. Call other parents to see if they will be home when your kids visit.
The community should support more resources being put toward providing fun and safe places for teens to hang out when they are not in school.
We want the adults in our lives to be sources of trustworthy and accurate information about drugs and alcohol. It makes it more likely that we will turn to you for support and guidance.
We need to address sports culture. Coaches and parents need to make their expectations to athletes very clear, and the town needs to sponsor safe ways to celebrate before and after competitions.
The results of the research showed that a lot of teens are suffering from stress, anxiety, and depression. We need to work together to figure out how to prevent kids from feeling these ways. There is so much pressure on us, both academically and socially. One way would be for adults and the community as a whole to let teens know they are valued, give them unstructured time, and get them help when they need it.
Having feelings of depression or anxiety is nothing to be ashamed of. As a community and a culture, we need to do away with the stigma and shame that prevents families from getting help for themselves and their kids.
Technology can provide families with great tools for keeping in touch. Social media can even be a great way for friends to keep in touch and socialize. But we also know that social media has contributed to our growing youth mental health issues. It can be tough to manage social media use. We know that this can be a source of tension for some families, but we've found that waiting till 8th for social media access is a good practice.
Alcohol, marijuana, and nicotine may be legal for adults, but not for youth under 21. Talk to your older kids about not supplying substances to their younger siblings. Monitor your supplies at home and do not host parties where substances are available.
It is best to get in the habit of monitoring or locking up your own alcohol, prescription medication, and over-the-counter medication. Too often, medication ends up being used by someone it was not prescribed for. This can have dangerous consequences and can contribute to substance use disorder. If you have leftover medications, dispose of them at the kiosk in the lobby of the Milton Police Department, open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
If you or someone you love is having surgery or being treated for pain, explore alternatives to opioids. There are safer options available that do not have the risk of addiction that opioids do.
The most important thing we can do is talk with children about any and all things. Start when they're young by asking them what they think and how they feel, and sharing with them what you think and how you feel. These conversations, among other things, help build trust, hopefully making it easier to discuss difficult topics as they get older. It's also helpful to reinforce positive decisions, as well as take the time to discuss challenges that arise in your child's or your child's friends' behaviors. Reminding them that you're a team and are there for them can go a long way as you seek to find the balance between giving them independence and keeping them safe.
We hope you have enjoyed our presentation today and that it has provided you with new knowledge and some food for thought. There is a lot more resources and information that can be found on our website, including our full community assessments at milton-coalition.org. Make sure you sign up for our newsletters while you're there. We also have a Facebook page that is packed with helpful information. And if you have a middle school or high school student who might be interested in our community-based youth group, Milton Youth Advocates for Change, reach out on their Instagram page or via email. And as always, if you have any feedback or questions for us, we always welcome them. And here's how you can get in touch with us. Thanks for listening.